current exhibition, Chinese Art in an Age of Revolution, Baoshi, marks the Cleveland Museum of Art's ongoing commitment to promote cultural exchanges with China. In 2006, as the museum closed the galleries for the construction and renovation project, we had the exceptional opportunity to present the exhibition from Monet to Picasso, masterworks of the Cleveland Museum of Art in China. Following that exhibition, which successfully introduced modern Western art to a Chinese audience, this exhibition offers American viewers the opportunity to appreciate modern Chinese art. It brings the subject to a venue of world art discourse. It is the contention of this exhibition that in trying to understand China today, we need to know about China in the past, at least the recent past. This exhibition tells the story of a 20th century Chinese artist, Baoshi, who struggled to make sense of the changing world and to show a love of beauty, a passion for intellectual adventure that transcended political turmoil. A core theme of this exhibition is the complex interplay of art, politics, and society. Looking back at Baoshi's life and Chinese history of the last century, we can't help but reflect on the momentous changes and upheavals that have affected all aspects of life in China. Many changes still occur on an ongoing basis. Certain changes still remain relevant for the 21st century. First, the global politics and China's international policies have changed. In the 30s and 40s, as China was fighting the war of resistance against Japan, national salvation was a major concern of the Chinese, for political leaders, intellectuals, and artists alike. The victory of the Chinese Communist Party in 1949 changed China's political landscape as much as the causes of artistic, social, and economic development. Then in the 50s, the Korean War deeply hampered China-US relations, and the hostility was further complicated by the Taiwan issue. Then the split of China and USSR in 1960 meant that China was isolated from outside influence and had to follow the path of self-reliance. Nationalism played an important role, and it was in this context that traditional-style Chinese painting, like the art of Baoshi, served to protect China's cultural heritage in the revolutionary society. Fu's art was symbolic of the Chinese view of their place and a national identity in the world at that time. Perhaps Baoshi, who died in 1965, could have never anticipated the normalization of China-US relations after President Richard Nixon's visit to China in 1972, nor could he anticipate that US and Chinese dignitaries stood in front of his artwork in the Great Hall of People for official photographs commemorating the new diplomatic relation. But today, China is no longer threatened by the forces of imperialism as in the 30s and 40s. The Cultural Revolution that did terrible damage to China's knowledge base has faded into history. The Chinese Communist Party is still in charge, but China has reinvented itself as a developing state, no longer revolutionary, but instead keen to cope with the post-Cold War world where ideological differences have been less important in international relations, economic and cultural exchanges. The new challenges are perhaps the globalized economy and society that could subvert China. Second, ongoing economic reforms and industrial modernizations continue to shape China, but now with a relatively more tolerant and welcoming attitude towards influence from the world. Experiencing socialist reconstruction in the 50s, the artist Baoshi remarked, quote, "Appearing like heaven and earth turned upside down, the changes to our homeland has been tremendous," end quote. Yet, during Baoshi's lifetime, China was fixated with technological modernity following the Soviet model. Mao's vision of ideological campaigns that mobilized the masses to exceed the laws of economics and reach agricultural and industrial targets during the Great Leap Forward period turns out to be fatally deceptive. This policy caused a famine which killed tens of millions of the Chinese people. Mao's successor, Deng Xiaoping, converted China from a command economy to one responding to market pressures. The new economic reforms practically replaced the common state industry, controlled employment, and fixed state salaries of the past. Whereas Fu Baoshi's generation participated in collective productivity of the late 50s and 60s, Chinese men and women from the 80s onward get involved in the possibility of what they call Shanghai, that is, jumping into the sea of private business. In the new era, however, there are other problems. Discontent about prices run alongside resentment over changes in employment structures, as well as the widening gap between rich and poor. These, together with the problems of official corruption, overpopulation, large-scale internal migration, pollution, environmental degradation, fuel a wider sense of political crisis. Reflecting on the world of the 60s in which he lived, Fu Baoshi commented, quote, "What an eventful era, so rich in the colors of romanticism," end quote. Revolutions in 20th century China have not endured in their original form, but they have contributed to the transformations of Chinese society and culture. The art of Fu Baoshi suggests that revolutionary efforts in modern China paradoxically have clashed with an ongoing need to transmit China's civilization. His art provides an important insight into the pattern of continuity and change in Chinese culture. Perhaps as we see how China transforms itself in a wider world order, it is necessary to understand how it also retains Chinese characteristics, drawing from the land and culture of Chinese civilization. In this regard, our museum's Chinese art collection no doubt provides the rich resources for understanding China and its cultural accomplishments. When we consider that a whole generation of American scholars, students, journalists, and businessmen was deprived of all contact with China in the 50s and 60s, we are now fortunate enough to experience the opening of China. It is my sincere wish that exchanges in the area of art and culture will contribute to the enhancement of friendship between the US and China. Thank you.